I think what's really exciting is that we are truly in the infancy stage. This is just the beginning of a whole new technological renaissance that is going to change how everything is done, how everything is perceived, and not just talking about the oil and gas or energy industry or the layman profession. I mean, our whole way of life is about to change.
Gosh, who knows where it's going to go, but we're all along for the ride.
Welcome to the Land Department Podcast. The state of land and energy as we see it.
Brent, what was the technology like when you first entered the land space? What was the new up and coming thing?
Baby, it was colored pencils and Tobin maps.
That's great.
That was it, man. I had an Allen scale and a compass. I still got a drawer of them things. They're like relics. I'm going to sell them on eBay for, or Facebook Marketplace for $20 a piece one day.
And
yeah, lots changed.
A lot's changed. How far we've come from colored pencils to typing in a chat window and getting everything you needed for the job.
Everything.
Yeah. We'll dive into that today. We got Jerris with us. How are you, man?
Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Brent, how did you connect with Jerris?
Well, landman circles are big but small, so it's we're connected a few different ways. I actually thought about reaching out to him. Jerris just did his service to the industry and wrote an article that got published in Landman magazine, and I was looking through it, and it's obviously AI and large language models are kind of a hot topic for everybody in the world right now, and especially in our space. So it was front of mind for me. We're doing some things in the company to try to see how we can leverage it. And so I saw his article. Obviously know he does a lot of speaking for the landman community on this topic, and he's become a pretty popular guy of late. So I'm appreciative of him being willing to come jump in here and talk about how landmen can use this stuff. So Jerris, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, anytime I can flex my nerd muscles, I get excited.
That's great.
Nerds are cool now, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Jerris, how long have you realized that AI was going to play a role in the land industry? At what point did it first dawn on you?
Yeah, so I've always been somewhat of an anomaly within the land community. Landman was always my first and foremost profession, but I was also a guy that was teaching myself various technological tools and things in the background that I could use to try and make myself more efficient. I think the first time when I was recognizing that there was some stuff happening was, today they're a Thomson Reuters company. Before that, when they were Thought Trace, and even before that, when they were Agile Upstream. Looking at some of the things that they were doing on document classification. And then at the same time, I forget the name of the company, but the guys that had the document classification that Quorum eventually bought and organized into, like with being able to screen documents inside of shared folders and being able to classify them. When I saw those two things, it became pretty evident that there was going to be stuff on the horizon that most people were probably not paying attention to. And so I really tried to lean in, learn as much about those two offerings, have multiple conversations with other folks in terms of what was being done on text identification and being able to take unstructured data and put it into a structured format. And that led to a lot of really great relationships with people and being able to pick their brains and learn from different technologies that were coming out. And then obviously, when OpenAI changed the world of ChatGPT, that really caught the attention. And so now we've seen these different large language models come into the market over the last year. And it's been really fun experimenting with what they can do. None of these have been built or designed for the landman profession, but there's different applications or ways that we can utilize them to help us grow more knowledgeable in our profession and also be able to use them to make our work more efficient. And I think what's really exciting is that we are truly in the infancy stage. This is just the beginning of a whole new technological renaissance that is going to change how everything is done, how everything is perceived, and not just talking about the oil and gas or energy industry or the layman profession. I mean, our whole way of life is about to change. And there's things that we can do, to be able to take advantage of some of those tools and be better landmen and enhance ourselves within our career paths.
Yeah, I think that's what we saw. I mean, we really started seeing how it was going to affect the land profession with some of the language recognition models that were out there. Thought trace was kind of the big one that came into the industry that, we all, whether you're in-house or in the field as a broker or a project manager, you knew what thought trace was because it had an immediate effect on the efficiency of like due diligence projects. When you had to take a sampling of 10,000 documents and pull provisions and pull pertinent, items from those things that you could then use to take a landman to review and interpret. That was the big thing. For us, due diligence always involved, lease and contract analysis. Well, now it never involves lease and contract analysis. You don't have to put people reading those documents and pulling out pertinent things. They run it through thought trace and other models that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest thing when we started to recognize, like, wow, this is having an effect on the need for contract landmen or land administration staff in these big integrations or acquisitions or mergers. And now with the GPTs that are coming out, the large language models, gosh, who knows where it's going to go, but we're all along for the ride, and everybody's trying to really understand how they can be leveraged, what they're going to be, where we think they're going to be. I guess is maybe a better way to state that.
Yeah.
And how we can stay ahead of it and try to make sure that we're staying competitive and staying efficient on that front. So
yeah,
that's the conversation today.
Yeah. So before we get into kind of the everyday uses today, where things are at, how we can actually use AI, I want to understand from your perspective, Jerris, can you just describe for a lot of the people in our industry what AI is and what a large language model is? We've already used that term, but how does it work and how does it grow over time?
Yeah. So, and that's kind of one of the misnomers that have come about as people are talking about artificial intelligence as though it's this brand new shiny object. The concept of artificial intelligence has existed for decades. When you look at the purest definition of artificial intelligence, it's basically having, in layman's terms, a computer or some type of technological object that is aiding in our mental capacities. So the idea of trying to take unstructured data, make it structured, or even taking structured data that already exists and trying to find new analysis with it is not really a new concept. It's just that our technology has evolved to be able to make it more efficient than what we've been able to have before. The real game changer, in my opinion, has been the implementation of natural language processing. And so this idea that you can talk to a machine or a software or chat bot, whatever you want to call it, in the type of language that we're using right now, and it understands that and it answers back that way. And really, when we talk about large language models, we're talking about the Chat GPT, we're talking about Microsoft Copilot, Anthropic, Claude, Perplexity AI. There's a bunch of different ones that people can utilize. One of the ways to get the most effective use out of it is to treat it and talk to it just like a person. I think a lot of people who try these tools out and they get frustrated with it or say it don't work. They're trying to take that chat bar and they're trying to use it like a Google search. And then when they just get really vague, random information, they say, well, this doesn't work. But the whole NLP, this natural language processing, has been the real game changer on us being able to extract the data. You don't necessarily have to be like a SQL, knowledgeable person or have programming knowledge anymore. Anybody can pick up one of these tools, talk to it like a person, and extract data and information that they previously did not easily have at their fingertips.
Very interesting. So that natural language processing really changes how we interact with intelligence and technology. What are some ways that you're seeing people, landmen specifically, use these chat bars, chat GPT, whatever other tools are in everyday settings for their work?
You could utilize it for asking regulatory questions. A lot of these language models have been trained on whatever is in the public domain. And so if there is regulatory information on a state by state basis, presumably those oil and gas or energy commissions along those states have different procedures and rules that they published. More often than not, you can ask about those specific rules and get some additional insight to be able to understand the regulatory aspect. Over decades of time, obviously, there have been countless blogs, articles, commentary that's been written about how to run title or how to negotiate leases. And these models, even without any customized training to it, do a very good job of being able to answer some questions or be able to provide some insights for it. Even in areas where I feel like I'm a pretty big expert on, I still consult with a large language model oftentimes because it helps me think about it in a perspective that I hadn't considered before. It kind of sounds weird to say that, this machine is creative, but there's so many various perspectives and points of view that is digested over time that you can really get some outside the box thinking. In areas where I don't feel like I'm an expert, then I can consult an LLM and try and get some additional information for it. There is a lot of skepticism in terms of to the accuracy of that information, and that skepticism is healthy, and it should be realized and it should be understood. But because we have so many different models that we can utilize, and most of them are free, at least to some capacity, kind of my rule of thumb is that if it's something I feel really confident on, I might just use one that I'm conversing with to get some creative ideas. If it's something that I'm not sure on, I'll pose the exact same question to at least 2, 3, maybe 4 different models to see how consistent the answer gets back. And if they're all giving me consistent answers back, then I feel like that the information I'm getting is spot on, that can be utilized.
Yeah. It's the good thing to compare it, and he nailed it as far as just getting a basic understanding of, hey, what's different in this state, or given my situation, how's the law interpreted in this state? The AUPL's publication of oil and gas law comparison by state. It is a tool that every field landman should have. Really, every in-house landman should have it too. It's a great resource that kind of sets forth, 10 or 20 standard things that you deal with as a landman doing, from a regulatory and legal standpoint. And I don't know the exact count of 20 sounds about right, but it kind of gives you the nuance from state to state. Well, with the language model, you can ask those same questions. How is life estate and remainder been handled in Mississippi compared to Texas? Those types of questions that are very basic, kind of black and white, of matter of law, or, it's a good resource there. Whereas you don't have to go and read a whole publication to try to find the jewel that you're looking for to answer the question you had. I know a lot of lawyers, very much kind of against that, but it's, it gives you the basics and understanding, when it comes to case law interpretation and nuance as to, hey, this is an opinion, a case that was out, that was ruled upon, but, hey, this is at the Supreme Court now, so you might not want to, lean on it too heavily. That's where your legal counsel is very important. And you always want to caution people to make sure that they're not acting purely off of that. But God, it just accelerates you. Again, efficiency is the key. It just makes you that much more efficient.
Yeah. And if there's information that is in the public domain, meaning that you can look online, Google it, whatever, and you can get full information on it that's not behind a paywall or is like a subscribe type deal, then that information is probably going to be inside of these models. So court case opinions, absolutely, those are going to be inside these models, and it's perfectly natural and a good idea that if you're hearing the energy community talk about some type of recent case, ask the model, give me a summary about this case that people are talking about. How is this case going to be applicable to my land profession? Or I work in this state. Is that court case going to have applicability to the state that I'm working in? A lot of states will publish their title standards in terms of, this is how the different nuances in terms of how title is supposed to be utilized within the state. You already mentioned rules of succession. Those are popular, very well published things that are available. So all those people should have a reasonable amount of confidence of being able to ask about. And then a lot of these models have the ability to upload files to them, whether they be PDFs, pictures, etc. And my experimentation of uploading, an oil and gas lease or some other type of oil and gas contract, it's very, very good at reading it and being able to pick stuff out. Similar to what, the Thought Trace or Grouper or some of those other assets that were in the past. Obviously, those have been heavily invested in time and capital on being able to provide something as accurate as possible. But for a starting place, Microsoft has Copilot as their LLM. Their Edge browser has Copilot built directly into it. And so if you have Microsoft Edge set up as your PDF viewer and you open up a PDF, there's a little button at the top that says Ask Copilot. And you can click on it and you can start asking questions about that PDF right there in your browser and getting some pretty intelligent answers and responses from it.
Can you give a really detailed, tactical, step-by-step how you would upload a contract and what kind of questions you would ask and what type of responses you would get back, and really give us an understanding of how it accelerates your process of going through that contract?
Yeah, so there's two questions that are there. So I'll kind of break them up.
Sure.
So one is one being how to upload, and really you just kind of pick your poison. Which LLM do you want to work in, whether it be Chat GPT or Copilot or Claude. That's another good one. And like I said, most of these have free accounts associated with it. They also have subscriber versions that you can get a little bit more information, a little bit more horsepower behind it. But typically it's as easy as, you'll see the little bar that you're going to chat in, you'll see the paperclip, and you click on that paperclip, and just like you would upload a file to anything, you can upload into it. Once you've uploaded that file to it, then what you want to do is give it context about, hey, make sure you're paying attention to what this is. One of the ways that I tell people about how to get started with this is, presume that this model is the most intelligent, experienced expert that you could ever come across. But even in that situation, if you were going to be talking to somebody face to face and you knew that they were an expert and you approached them in a room or on the street, whatever, you would still have to give them context about what it is the problem that you're facing or what it is that you're trying to accomplish with it. Yeah. You're still going to talk to them about that. And so, as you're talking to them about that, that's exactly the type of context that you would put inside of, your chat with the model. And so, kind of just basic guidelines. I mean, there's prompt engineering that's the term that's utilized for setting up your query as you're going to do to the model. People who are very good with coding, programming, talking, et cetera, with these, there are news reports of companies paying up to $400,000 in salary for people who know how to talk to these models correctly. So for anybody listening, I'm not worth $400,000, but I'm probably worth 75% that, no, I'm kidding. But for just like basic bullet points in terms of how you would want to set up your requests, what you want to be detailed and you want to be specific. So, kind of something else that I tell folks is that if you're not accustomed to chatting with a machine and it feels a little weird about how personal you're getting with that machine, not personal, but personable in terms of talking to it like you would a person, then you're probably going down the right road. So if you haven't done it before, it should feel a little weird, like I'm giving way too much detail to somebody who's not going to understand it. And what you have to accept is that it is going to understand it. Once you put in your initial query, it'll give you back some information. Feel free to ask questions on the information that has come back to you. So ask follow-up questions, carry on a conversation with it. One of the things that you can do is ask the model to be an expert, and that sets up its framework. It's, for for lack of a better word, state of mind on how it is trying to talk to you. And so if you're going to upload an oil and gas lease and you want to get some very specific, detailed information about it, tell it. Assume you are a landman that has been practicing in the industry for 30 years and you're extremely knowledgeable about oil and gas leases, and assume that I am somebody who is somewhat knowledgeable, but I'm trying to understand better. I used very, very natural language that is there, and that's exactly how you should talk to it. If you're asking it to draft something for you, like an email or a letter, or if you're trying to, if you're going to have a difficult phone call and you need to have like a script or prompt for you, tell it that's what you're trying to do and ask it to generate it in that way. And then one of the tips that I use a lot that I rarely see published from people is tell the model to ask you questions to be able to help the model gain clarity about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so oftentimes when I set up a prompt that I'm going to have in it, especially if I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, and I'm not exactly sure it's going to understand everything that I'm trying to accomplish, I will include a sentence that says something to the effect of, ask me any follow-up questions that you need to for us to be able to have greater clarity and reach a resolution. And then when I do that, it'll usually fire off 4 or 5 questions to me that I may have forgotten to put in the prompt that allows me to give it additional context. And the answers, it takes the answers and insights to a whole new level when it's asking you to clarify or how to respond, et cetera. And you just go down the road of having a conversation with something that feels like a person, but is not a person. And you begin to capture some pretty incredible knowledge that way.
That's pretty interesting. That was a concept that I haven't used, or you're exactly right. You don't hear people talk about that. Hey, ask me for clarification if you're unsure. And I think that's kind of the thing that, at least when I talk to people about it, they're like, well, I don't know what it knows. And I don't know if I asked it the right thing, or I got a half answer back. And so it doesn't know everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this isn't going to work. It's a great point. A good takeaway.
And that's, one of the contrasts that was brought up earlier in terms of people are going into it trying to do a Google search. And then they're like, well, this didn't answer what I was looking for. Whereas on a large language model, you may have to have 3 to 4 iterations of questions and answers back and forth just to set up the prompt. But when you do that, then it's going to be like you've got the most knowledgeable expert that you'll ever come across chatting with you and giving you insight.
I've had some experience working with myself, and a lot of times you're not going to get the exact response you want. And I've seen people stop there. It didn't work. But if you say, hey, that's not the right response. You did this. I need you to do this. It'll do it right then and there. And you can do that a couple of times and you get the perfect response back. So it's very adjustable and it understands when it did something wrong.
Pretty adaptable.
Well, and that brings up kind of another interesting nuance, is that when you talk to a person and you're asking a person to help you out with something and it doesn't quite give you the answer, sometimes you're a little afraid to tell them that they gave you the wrong answer because you don't want to hurt their feelings, right?
Yeah.
You can't hurt its feelings.
Yeah.
Yet.
You can't hurt it yet.
Right. So even in the prompts, I see different schools of thought of people saying please and thank you and their responses that they're giving. One school of thought is it has no feelings and it doesn't care if you're saying please or thank you. The other school of thought is when they take over, you want them to remember that you were nice to them.
Exactly.
Yeah, no feelings. So, Brent, I know you had something you wanted to say, but along this lines, you've mentioned prompt engineering, which is basically how you ask the question to the GPT, to the AI. I want to talk about those prompts and is it worth it to get a premium subscription to one of these GPTs, these large language models? And if you'll talk about, I know that people used to have prompts kind of saved in a doc and they would copy and paste them and then use that. But now there's custom GPTs through Chat GPTs, premium subscription. Can you talk about, is it worth it to have that premium subscription, and then kind of the benefits of these custom GPTs and how to use them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will give you some like my personal experience or real life experience on whether to go down the road of, buying a subscription. Even as ridiculously cheap, comparatively speaking, as these subscriptions are, I am a huge cheapskate. Like, I hate paying for stuff that I think I can figure out a workaround for free. And so I have tried pro subscriptions on Claude. I've tried it with Perplexity. I went down the road of getting it for ChatGPT. And really, the reason why I have a pro subscription for ChatGPT today is to be able to access that GPT library. And then also to be able to create my own GPTs for different aspects of life. So a couple months ago, if you have a ChatGPT subscription, the Plus or Pro subscription, you can create a custom GPT along those lines. And it gives you access to GPT-4, and then you start with GPT-4, and then you can start to do some stuff on the back end. So to my knowledge, I released what I believe is the first GPT that's custom for landmen, that's trained on landmen topics. And so I've spent hours of conversation in the back end. I've been uploading various, sources and things, information that I've either presented on or collected over the years. And I'm constantly like working on it in spare time, trying to make it better and trying to refine it and make it more intuitive. But one of the things that I really like about it and how it's helpful to other people, especially if they're new to using these large language models, is that I've tried to design it to where you don't have to have that context. And so as an example, if I go into ChatGPT-4, just the standard run-of-the-mill mode that's available to everyone, if I go into it and I ask, what is AAPL? It'll give me information about Apple computers, because AAPL is the ticker symbol for AAPL. And so it'll give me like all the information about Apple. If I go into the GPT though that I created and I ask, what is AAPL? Because of the information and training that I've given it on the back end, it'll give me a synopsis of the American Association of Professional Landmen. If I go to the run-of-the-mill GPT and I ask, tell me about the 2015 JOA, the answer it'll give back to me is, well, you could be talking about a form that was made in 2015. You could be talking about a contract that was dated in 2015. You'll have to give me more information. If I go into my GPT and say, tell me about the 2015 JOA, it'll say the 2015 JOA was a massive upgrade from the prior 1989 form, and these are the main bullet points that it covers. And so a couple of things that I see that being really helpful on. One is, if you are brand new to the industry and you're brand new in your profession, having a very experienced, knowledgeable mentor is invaluable. Somebody you can ask questions to, but not everybody has that accessible to them. This makes that accessible to them to where they can ask those questions that either on things that they don't know about or they're too embarrassed to ask about in a public setting. They can ask this on the side and get some really good information from it. The other thing that I'm trying to do by creating a custom GPT is to eliminate that necessity of being good at prompt engineering. And so it's trained on the landman mental state, our language, et cetera. It already has that context built in to where you don't have to set the stage in a very detailed way. You can be pretty general in your questions on what you're trying to look for on a landman topic, and it's going to already know what it is that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So how does that work, Jerris? So what you have with a premium subscription, for instance, you're starting with a base of, what GPT-4 is trained on, right? And it's the entirety of the web or whatever's been published. What's the mechanics of that process? Do you say, okay, now I'm a premium subscription. I want to make a kind of landman specific version of this. Do you have to prompt it and kind of lay the groundwork for what you're creating? Or are you just adding to the top of what's already there, but with specific nuance to what you're trying to achieve?
It's kind of a mixture of both. One is, so when you sign up for the premium subscription of ChatGPT and you log in, you'll see something in the corner, I think, that says like My GPTs. And once you click on that, then you can see the entire GPT library of the thousands or tens of thousands at this point that have been created. And it's got a search deal. So if there's like a specific topic that you're trying to look for, or if you're wanting, particular help on being able to handle a certain task, I mean, of any walk of life, then you can see other GPTs that people have created. And then some
have
of them
access
are
to that.
actually, yeah, or some of them might be standalone applications like on a different website that you can go to. And these are just like teaser or demo versions of it, et cetera. But if you're going to create your own, there's a button somewhere that just says like create your own GPT, and you open it up and it asks you, what is it that what do you want to create? I mean, it's very similar to how you would talk to a GPT for, just a generalized query. It helps you create a custom one in the same method. And as you talk to it, it's adding instructions to its background. And then you also have the ability to create knowledge sources, various attachments. They can be text files, they can be JSON files, they can be PDFs, etc. And you can compile your information and upload it to it, and it uses it as a knowledge base. One of the things that I've learned, that I've pointed out, or that I've learned from experience, is that they do say it's beta, and it is. It doesn't always work as perfect as what I would like. So I'm like constantly trying to refine and try and figure out how I'm going to structure the data a different way to where it can read it more efficiently, where it doesn't get confused on multiple topics. And so there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing in the background to try and teach it to look at that. When this type of question is asked, look at this, not that, or trying to strike. It can also access the internet. And so I'm trying to like strike a balance between my sources I feel good about, internet I don't feel really good about. So use my sources first, but use the internet to kind of, supplement it where needed.
Okay.
And this is where I confess, like, I'm not an expert on this stuff. I'm just, I just play around with it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a couple
it's
of
a
things.
That's
hobby
what we're
that's
trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That's kind of what got us going down it on our end is, we have, as landmen, we've all got, and especially in the field side, a lot of knowledge there, and the in-house side as well. But there's a lot of knowledge there that we as professionals have. And so how can we leverage this tool to improve our efficiency, to maybe gain a competitive advantage, be quicker about what we're doing, give better answers, be more accurate with our work. And so it's like personally, one of the concerns I had originally when all this really started happening, Khalil and I've had this conversation just in talking, is, I'm okay. I want to teach something. I want to become more efficient, but do I want to just take all my work and all my time and knowledge as a landman, and I'm using me as an example, and give that away to the world?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of one of the questions I have is, how do you, there's obviously the open source models that are out there. And when you have a premium subscription, you make that model and it's available to the world. And that's great. I'm all about, helping humanity. But how are companies using this to maybe improve their product or their specific service for a company or a person, such that, they're more valuable or their product is more enhanced? How does that work? Are there models out there where you maybe go more to an enterprise version where what you create is yours and not available to the public domain?
Yeah. So, there's ways to take these different models offline, whether it be ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot or Gemini. That's the Google version that's starting to pick up. The rumor mill flying right now is that Gemini might be the one that Apple partners with to be able to enhance Siri in the iPhones. I think it's kind of speculation. We'll see how that all shakes out. But there are ways to take these out offline, not necessarily offline, but outside of that given environment. So like currently the GPT I have is within the OpenAI Chat GPT library, because that's just the easiest way to distribute it. Somebody who wants to access my GPT, they have to have a pro or plus subscription to Chat GPT. They got to pay the $20 a month, and then they can access it. I make nothing off of that. But I also admit that like today it's a beta version. Could I take it offline or outside of that environment and put it to a standalone application and then like charge a subscription to it? Absolutely. And that's something that when I feel more confident about what it's doing, that might be something that I do, because people are still getting extraordinarily valuable information out of it, for the purposes that I mentioned earlier, and then beyond, of other ideas and things to exploit. There are companies that are of large magnitude that have figured out how to take the GPT models or others. They may have an API that links back to a different large language model, and they're creating internal applications for the company. And so source information that the company has, or procedures or policies, or, common troubleshooting type things, that company will have its own AI bot that you can go and talk about with it. Unfortunately, and I mean, if you're in the land and technology space, and recognize that the people who are oftentimes creating that stuff are not trained on land knowledge. And so there is a gap of needing somebody who can talk to your programmer people and can talk to your land people and act as an interpreter or a mediator between the two to be able to create the best information and knowledge. And that rarely happens, unfortunately.
I mean, that's what we're kind of dealing with at Delta. We're doing a lot of programming of our database, modernizing our platform. We've got 20 years of land data in our existing system. Ownerships, breakdowns of ownership, interpretation of run sheets in the title, a lot of information that we capture. And we're thinking, how can we make the most use of this for our clients? How can we, but also set the rules so that we know that the answers you get are based on the content of our data or the content of whatever we're capturing, such that you're not getting influence from things that are outside of your control or outside of your oversight or review process. So that's the big thing that, us as a company, and obviously other companies are doing that. We're trying to figure out, okay, how can we leverage these tools within our databases that we're creating to make them more usable, more accessible, more productive. So that's kind of the questions I have. It's really one of the reasons I reached out to you originally. It's just curiosity about how can you take these products, nest them within your system, leverage that to get real specific answers to, say, your project area. I've collected these 10,000 documents, blah, 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 whatever question. And it's locked within the confines of, the area you're working or the data you've collected for that specific project for that specific client.
Yeah. So I've been fortunate to work, virtually all facets of the land profession. Most of my career has been focused on the in-house standpoint. And so in addressing, your question or giving some insight here, I'll be focused on kind of what that in-house perspective might be. So when I think of a company landman and what he or she are facing on a regular basis, there's a lot of different things that occupy their time. Knowing their area is a big thing that occupies their time. Looking for ways to strategically utilize the assets that their company has and work out some type of trade or some type of agreement with another company to be able to gain more value out of it. Managing the different vendors or brokers that they have, ingesting, lease purchase reports, or, figuring out the right mode of business for it. So can AI come in today and clone every aspect of that job? The answer would be it's possible, but it's not readily available. And I personally would not have a high degree of confidence in it. But are there things that it can do to better utilize the time that you have available in your day? And so, for example, if you're going to do an acreage trade with another company, trying to come up with strategy on the acreage that you're going to trade, get the values, et cetera, that's a hard task, but it's also time consuming, but it's not the only thing that's done. Once you've got the phone call or the email that says, yes, these are the terms that we're going to have, then there's a whole document drafting phase that you have to go into to come up with the agreement. And that is something that AI is very good at, is drafting a document or helping you review the document or coming up with provisions that you need that's going to speak legalese and is going to be able to cover the objectives that you want in that deal. And so if you think about being able to have a tool that can eliminate hours or days of document drafting and can do it in a matter of minutes, that's a huge advantage that you can have on your daily basis. Now, it may
Yeah.
not necessarily be great at strategizing and trying to figuring out like what is the trade that you should do, but because you don't have to spend all your time on the paper aspect of that deal, you have more time to focus on looking for what the best strategies or what the best trades
Yeah.
are. And so
That's been one of
that's
the biggest things for us is curative documents.
right. Oh yeah.
Help
Yeah.
you draft a document that corrects X, Y, Z, and uploading your requirement or uploading your improperly drafted document. Say, I need to draft a document that corrects this. It's been a huge efficiency.
Yeah.
Big productivity increase, and it just helps. If anything, get something drafted, so at least then you can send it to your supervisor or your attorney to review. Hey, I've drafted this. Have I covered all my bases given your expertise? It's great at that. I'd use it to draft random letters for circumstances. Maybe it's an offer for something. Maybe I'm talking to maybe a business to business type transaction. That's where it's at. We still haven't got to where it can read documents in a red sheet and give you an ownership report. I think maybe we're 5 or 10, 15 years from that. Who knows? Maybe 2 years. God, I don't know.
Yeah. We would love for it to be able to, well, I mean, do we though? Do we want it to be a complete clone of who we are? Yeah. I mean,
No,
you still want to
to be a landman for a little while, man.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But if your daily work tasks consist of 4 different buckets that you're spending equal time in, maybe that AI can't replace all 4 buckets, but if it can replace one of them, and now instead of only spending 25% of your time on the most value creative things for your company, if you can now spend 33% of your time on the things that are the most value creation activities for the company, that's a huge additive. That's a huge value that is there. And so that's what I invite people to think about, is like not trying to look at it as an all or nothing approach. Look at these different models and see how they can enhance, potentially replace certain aspects of your day, not your entire day altogether.
Yeah.
And, leverage that technology for doing some of the more time consuming, monotonous things that it's very good at doing, and allowing you to free up your mental bandwidth and focus on some of those more value creative activities that the AI isn't there yet, but you being able to put more time and attention to it is going to have a huge return on it.
Yeah. I think one thing I want to clarify, and we kind of touched on it, but just make sure it's clear, like let's say you upgrade to that $20 a month ChatGPT Plus subscription. You can have your GPTs. I know that yours is in the library for GPTs that you created, Jerris, but you can also have private ones that
sure.
You only have, if you create your GPT through there, and you only have access if you have a link, but you can also have teams inside of ChatGPT to where you invite only people from your company domain are able to be inside of there. And let's say you create your GPT for curative drafting. It is the curative drafting GPT for your company, and it standardizes it. You teach it the format that you want for all of your drafts to look like. And you even give it, 100 previous drafts that you've made so that it knows exactly what to look for, how to structure it, how to word things. And then everyone in your company uses that GPT for curative drafting moving forward. So that's kind of like the nuts and bolts of how it could work. And it doesn't have to take forever to make these GPTs. You can do one in 10 minutes if you want to. It's not going to be perfect, and you'll have to refine it over time, but you could do it in about 10 minutes. And like with anything, the first one's always longer. The second one will be much faster. So that's I
think that's what that's a good point. That's what we're all looking for, is we know that it's not where it needs to be, but in time, with investment of time, just like Jerris has done, he spent hours and hours and hours and built a product that he knows and understands that addresses specific needs for landmen. I think that's what we're all looking for, is, if we're going to invest the time, how do we get the most out of it? And if you can get buy-in in time, you can build a really tailored, customized product that you can count on, and that what the training, that it came from, and that that what you're getting out of it is from the fruits of your labor. and, your experience and your application of your circumstance. I think that's the biggest thing, especially in land work. We talked about states, or things are different across the country. Circumstances are different. Maybe your perspective is different. A field landman's needs are going to be different than an in-house landman's needs.
Mm-hmm.
And how you train your GPT may be different, so that you get the answers more efficiently and quickly that are more tailored to what you need. So I think that's what we're trying to figure out as a company is, how do we go about taking all this knowledge of 40 years of business, 43 years of business, and leverage it and build something that is beneficial to us and our clients that we work for and the people we work for. I think all businesses doing that. Individual professionals are doing it. We're just trying to find the balance. I know personally, us at Dudley, we're trying to find the balance of leveraging the technology that's out there, but not going so deep into building something so custom that it's going to be irrelevant in 3 years when the next version of the open source product is out there.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's the question that I like, think about every morning at 5:30 when I'm drinking coffee. It's like, holy crap,
Yeah.
I know I need to be doing something. I don't know where my starting point should be, or like how I should model this such that I can take advantage of all the work that everyone else is doing, but then hoard the specific knowledge that we have, to make sure that it benefits, our company, or our landmen or our clients.
Well,
So we'll see. Who knows what 3 to 5 years looks like? I'm still a landman. I hope that, we can, we're still needed here, and we will be, but things are changing and it will be different. And we'll see how it goes and see where we land.
yeah. Kind of as a wrap-up question for us, Jerris, where do you see AI in the land business in the next 3 to 5 years? What's the trajectory, and where do you envision us being?
I can barely envision the next 3 to 5 months. 3 to 5 years just seems. It just honestly, I mean, it just seems unimaginable with the speed of everything that is happening right now. I don't think there's anything that's off the table. Like I think there's a potential for everything to be able to be accomplished. Early on, I would have thought, okay, well, there's a couple of aspects of the landman profession that a machine would never be able to touch. Running title is going to be really, really challenging. One, because you have to have 100% confidence that 100% of the documents are being read exactly as they're written, and that introduces bad copies, that introduces cursive. There's a lot of things that are there. And as we know from that title aspect, a single word can have dramatic
Changes everything.
Yeah, changes on what everything is. And so, is it going to reach a point to where it's able to confidently capture everything? That to me, that's hard to wrap my mind around, but I'm not going to say it's impossible. Negotiation is something that I would have felt like that a human would always have to be part of. And then a European company that focuses on law products said that their AI successfully negotiated an NDA without any human intervention. Now, an NDA is not a super complicated document, but it has the type of intelligence to where it's able to recognize what should be in there, not be in there, and is able to make red lines, et cetera. And so the final product, all it needed was the human signature. That happened in November, and honestly, like 4 months ago feels like an eternity with all the advancements that are taking place. So I know that doesn't really answer the question like 3 to 5 years from now, but we're truly working on this now on a month-to-month, if not week-to-week or day-to-day basis. I mean, there is new advancements that are literally happening every day. And it's a very challenging game to try and stay on top of that and be able to know what are the resources available and how do I take advantage of them. That's something that I do as a hobby. And it's been fun to be able to find other people now who are interested in it. I mean, this was some of that stuff that I've been doing for a couple of years and trying to look at different technological stuff. And I was that weird guy in the corner that was focused on stuff. And now it's, there's something that we need to be utilizing and working on. So,
Well, you're not weird. I mean, there were people recognized it, and there were a lot of people who, and I mean, you mentioned the groupers of the world, those guys that leverage that product and were really trying to get ahead of it. And they built good products that were specifically trained. And I think everybody knew it. It was just skepticism and ignorance, people not really understanding. I mean, frankly, I'm in that boat. I'm trying to learn day by day, just like you mentioned. And I think everybody is. So, luckily there's folks like you that have devoted the time, that are willing to speak about it and share what they've learned, that are willing to help out the community. And we really appreciate you, Jerris. Thank you for sharing your experience and your knowledge on the space, and wish you the best of luck. We're going to have to have you back in 14 or 15 days when it's all changed.
Yeah, exactly. Talk about everything that's happened. It's hard to predict where this will go because there is so much happening so fast. My advice would be though, don't run away from it, or don't hide your head in the sand and think it's going to go away. It's going to come down to the people who recognize it and embrace it and know how to utilize it, and those who don't. And I think those who are willing to work alongside of it are not going to become obsolete. Those who try to fight against it might be disappointed with the outcome.
Yeah. Jerris, how can people get in touch with you? How can they find your GPT if that's something you want to promote? Tell us where to connect.
Yeah. So I am very active and available on LinkedIn. So that's a pretty easy way to find me. And Jerris Johnson is not a super common name. So if you find it, that's likely me. AAPL directory, of course, you can find me in there. I stay very active in AAPL. If you are interested in the GPT that I created, it's called Ottera, Otterra. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it because it named itself. If people ask me and they're like, is it Ottera or Ottera or whatever? And I said, I don't know. It came up with its own name, and we designed kind of a goofy logo for it. I say we, like my best buddy LLM, right? Came up with that. So you can search in Chat GPT library under that name, or search for Landman. More likely it's going to come up and you'll see it.
Love that. That's great.
Well, we'll put a link. Jerris.
Yeah,
appreciate you, man.
We'll put links to that in the show notes for listeners. Thanks for listening. And
sure.
Appreciate it, Jerris.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Land Department. Check out our website in the show notes or visit dudley-land.com to learn more about us.